Now, I had quite a detailed say at the top of the program about net zero by 2050 and the energy crisis gripping Europe at the moment. By the way, if you ever missed these interviews or editorials in the program from earlier on, you can always catch up with them via the Sky News website or Sky News on YouTube. But what I highlighted was how at the moment Europe is going through massive problems with energy, prices going through the roof, partly because they haven't had enough wind. In places like the UK, they haven't had enough wind, and so they've had to buy more gas, and gas prices are going up and all the rest of it. The scientists are now saying that global warming might be causing global stilling, which is stopping the wind turbines from going and giving them renewable energy. You can't believe this stuff. You wouldn't believe this stuff. I also showed you what our push for renewable energy has done to prices in Australia with a graph we borrowed from the ABC that shows price rises in electricity compared to all other prices in Australia. And you can see that those prices really start to take off in the late 2000s noughties. They're about 2007, 2008 when we started really pushing for renewable energy in this country. So that tells the story for us now that people are saying we've got to go even harder on renewable energy. And people are saying we need 100% renewable energy and storage. You can't do that. It is actually impossible. But one of the people pretending this is all easy is, of course, the next head of state of Australia, Prince Charles. And he reckons he can suggest at least, what our Prime Minister should do. Have a look.
Scott Morrison, the Australian PM, isn't even certain that he could make it to the meeting in Glasgow?
Is that what he says, is he?
He did say, yeah. He said he's spent enough time in quarantine. I mean, what would you say to world leaders about why they should come to Glasgow?
Well, that's what I'm trying to say all the time. And the point being that this is a last chance saloon.
Let me bring in Nationals Senator Matt Canavan, now former Resources Minister in this country. Good to talk to you again, Matt. Really, Prince Charles, he's going to be our head of state and he also gives us advice on our energy and climate policies?
It's very unfortunate, Chris, because I'm a supporter of the constitutional monarchy system we have. Not because I've got any great love for the English. I'm of Italian and Irish stock. Particularly the Irish side of me sometimes grates on it, but the system works because it's good to have the so-called reserve powers, the ability to dismiss governments, what have you, with people who aren't involved in partisan politics. I think the system works really well. But it all collapses, that whole system collapses, if the monarchy involves themselves in a day-to-day partisan or political issue. So let's hope this does not continue from the monarchy. I also note that Prince Charles informed us all that he powers his Aston Martin through white wine and cheese, I think. I'm just hoping that all of these private jets that fly to Glasgow are similarly powered by, I don't know, cognac or sherry or something, because hopefully then they won't be burning so much fossil fuels.
I just hope that if we must have a monarchy, and I am a Republican, but if we must have a monarchy, I hope they skip him and the Queen just gives the nod to Prince William. He seems eminently more sensible, but we shall see.
What about that Harry fella? Do you think about Harry and Meghan?
We'll leave Harry and Meghan. They could be left aside too. This is the problem. This is the problem with your monarchy. You want to go with merit. You want to go with people elected into positions, I reckon. But we'll leave that debate for another day. Tell us about net zero by 2050 and a coalition government committing to it when we know it can't be done. The International Energy Agency says half of the emissions reductions would have to come from technology yet proved up.
Well, that's correct, Chris, and I'm firmly of the view that particularly the Liberal National side of politics does its best work when we focus on practical things that can improve people's lives, when we focus on building dams for people to expand farming, when we focus on getting major projects up and running, like the Adani mine, which we've done, and creating real jobs for people. Focusing on stuff that's utopian and saving the planet and all this stuff, it's not our core business. And I'm uncomfortable here that some in the Liberal National Party seem to be putting ourselves in the position of a McDonald's trying to sell health food. Our brand is not about this sort of stuff. Our brand is delivering practical opportunities for Australian people, protecting their jobs, protecting our borders, making sure that we put Australia first in everything we do. And I don't think the PM, I hope he doesn't go to Glasgow, because I don't think going to Glasgow with all of these other rich people who like to use wine to power their cars, is going to put this country first. This is not what we need right now. The people pushing this net zero line the most, the biggest backers of it are the banks, because they will make a lot of money off all these offsets and trading schemes you'll need to have to meet a net zero target. And my general rule here, Chris, is that if anything is good for the banks, it's probably bad for me. That's just a rule of thumb for me, right? That if the banks are thinking this is really good for them, if the banking sector makes a lot of money out of it, they're probably doing it on the backs of average working Australian men and women.
Yeah, your view on banks, I think, is shared by a lot of people. I'll never forget the best letter to the editor I've ever seen in this country after they split the old State Bank of South Australia into the good bank and the bad bank with all the bad debts. And someone just wrote in, good bank oxymoron, bad bank tautology. I'll dig it out one day. Now, I want to come back to what big business is saying on all of this. But first, let's have a look at what Anthony Albanese, the Labor leader, has been saying.
This is about the future of our economy. It's about the future of our planet. And the Prime Minister can't even say whether he'll turn up. Well, he's been absent from the debate, seriously, on climate change up to this point. It would be absurd if he was absent from presence at Glasgow.
So there's what the Labor leader says. He's all in for net zero by 2050, urging Australia to do this, urging Scott Morrison to do this. There's so much sense and there's facts and there's logic behind what you're saying, Matt. But the other groups who are basically saying what Labor are saying are the Business Council of Australia. That's big business. And incredibly, the Minerals Council of Australia. It's supposed to support and advocate for our coal mining industry.
Well, it is this unusual realignment of politics here where the Labor Party themselves are lining up with big business. The Labor Party are now the party of the big banks, the big superannuation funds, always been the party of the big unions. They don't represent small businesses, your small individual contractors, your tradesmen and women of this country. And if we want to continue to win elections and be successful as we have over the past 10 years, I think it's very important that we remember those small people, especially the Nationals Party, which I'm a member of in Canberra. We think small is beautiful. We don't like big corporations or big organisations which suck the individuality out of each and every one of us. We want to give each individual Australian their power to decide their own future. And so one of my fundamental objections to going down the net zero path is it does mean that big government is put in charge of what car you can drive, of what you can use for a power source, even what food you can eat. Big government is going to be there to plan your own individual life. And there's another word for such a planned economy. It's called communism, Chris. And that is not, again, what we're about. We're about that small individual personal responsibility and opportunity. And net zero doesn't do that. It will crush all that individuality because there'll have to be a whole lot of rules to make sure we meet net zero. If we could do it anyway without rules or taxes or restrictions, then what are we all talking about? Why do we need to do anything if it's going to happen anyway? But that's not the case. We know that's not the case. We know for renewable energy to work, they have to put restrictions on coal-fired power and stop further investment in it. We know that for electric cars to work, governments around the world are saying that they're going to ban internal combustion engines. They're going to take your car away come a certain date. That's the only way you meet net zero, through the hand of big government, and that's not what I support.
Would you back net zero in Australia if it included the development of a domestic nuclear energy?
Look, no, I still would not. I do support the development of a nuclear power industry in Australia. I think it's time we consider that for our own national security and energy needs. And of course, it would help reduce emissions in the electricity sector. And I think we should make sensible decisions to reduce our carbon emissions, but net zero is a fantasy. The broader problem here, though, is it's not just about the electricity sector, Chris. So obviously nuclear energy would help, and if it was 100% adoption, would remove all carbon emissions. But that doesn't do anything for the grazier, whose each head of cattle is emitting about 2.1 to 2.3 tonnes of carbon dioxide a year. Now, at prevailing carbon prices we're seeing in Europe, that puts the Australian grazier back a couple of $100 per head per year. And if he's got 1,000 head, guess what? That's $200,000 a year. And so up here in central Queensland, where the beef sector is going so well, I don't think we should sign up to impose such a burden on our long-suffering cattle industry. And I certainly don't think we'd want to see those sort of prices then flow through, those sort of cost increases flow through to average people's shopping bills. That would add somewhere between $7 or $10 a kilogram to the price of your beef and mince in your shops.
Thanks.
That's not something that you know, Prince Charles would be able to afford that, but the rest of us wouldn't.
Thanks for joining us, Matt Canavan. I appreciate it. All that talk about beef is making me hungry.